Welcome to Context. I'm Lorna Dueck. We've got a great audience and a brand new program about life beyond the headlines. Today we're going to bring you a new national poll that discovered the way we think about religion in our country has radically changed. The dichotomy between those who attend weekly religious services and everyone else shows a deep divide in our country over religion. It's one of the issues we'll explore today on Context. Extremism is often linked with religion. We've seen radical beliefs play roles in the tragic 9/11 attacks, the Arab Spring, Norway's recent tragedy, and East Africa's current famine. Many religions claim to be on the rise, but skeptics argue religion does more harm than good. Why, in God's name, does violence happen? Can we trust religion? Let's put it in context. And here is one item that shows trust in religion is not what it used to be for Canadians. A Context TV survey conducted by Ipsos Reid found 47% of Canadians say religion does more harm than good in the world. 64% of Canadians say religion provides more questions than answers. Those opinions changed drastically among the 19% of Canadians who claim to attend weekly worship services, and we'll get to that later. But first, the background on our guests who will help us explore this. Professor Paul Chamberlain is the author of several books on religion, including his latest, Why People Don't Believe. He's a professor of philosophy of religion and apologetics at Trinity Western University. Sheikh Alaa Al-Sayed was born in Egypt. He moved to Canada when he was 15 years old. He has a bachelor's degree in Sharia and is an accomplished scholar in the Quran. He's the director of religious affairs for the Islamic Centre of Canada and hosts regular workshops coaching youth against radicalization and serves with Mercy Mission World. Let's start with you, because in the recent 9/11 reflections, Canada's Prime Minister said the #1 threat facing Canada's safety is Islamism and Islamic terrorism. How can you assure us that your faith is good for Canada?
It's actually disheartening, in all honesty, to hear our Prime Minister make these kind of comments with the Dr. Pavlov theory when it comes to word association, a certain religion with a certain act. However, we simply say, in all fairness, if anybody wants to treat anyone or basically accuse anyone of anything, the proof is coming back to the sources, where we say the Quran and Sunnah has nothing to do with terrorism or terrorist, period. It is, of course, we give him the benefit of doubt that he will come back and certainly rectify what he said and mean what he said. But indeed, Islam is very good for a Canadian because it's actually a comprehensive way of life. We look at the better community, we look at the bigger picture. Among the goals of the Islamic law is serving or actually protecting one's soul, one's religion, one's mind, and one lineage and one honor. So the bedrock of Islam is actually the protection and the bigger picture of the community in itself.
For the million Muslims in Canada, those remarks were just part of this growing distrust on faith in Canada. Paul, you saw the Ipsos Reid poll that we discovered only 53% of Canadians believe in God, a huge drop from just 6 years ago when over 90% of Canadians said they believed in God. The statistics are equally surprising to me for people who actually go to church services or any kind of worship service every week. What has happened to belief in God in this country?
Well, it's astounding, really, on one level it is. On the other hand, it's not really that surprising. I mean, given the fact that our the perceptions of religion over the last 5 to 10 years in Canada, even maybe more so than that, but particularly the last 5 and 10, have radically changed. And you can see this in a variety of ways. Religion, rather than being seen as the solution to some of humanity's deepest problems, if it ever was seen as that, is increasingly seen by Canadians as becoming the problem. It's something that moves people to commit atrocities, acts of violence, whether it be suicide bombings or abortion clinic bombings, or like the great big one, 9/11, which we've been commemorating recently. And religion is perceived increasingly by people today as having a power unmatched by any other thing in the world, which I think is an overstatement, but it's seen as that by many people, to move people to commit these kind of atrocities. And of course, in keeping with that, there's been an onslaught of books in the recent years written by a group of people who we often call the New Atheists, written the subtitles like God is Not Great, The God Delusion, The End of Faith, titles like this, and they become bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers list, and they're making the case very strong that religion is not simply false and mistaken, as atheists have always argued, but religion is actually a force for evil in the world, and we'd be better off without it. In fact, in the strongest statements of all these made by these folks, and this is made routinely this way, the eradication of religion may even be the key to the survival of the human race. It's that strong, because I'm just going to say, because if people like this ever got their hands on weapons of mass destruction, they would be willing to use them. Yeah.
If that's the North American view, Sheikh Allah, we are seeing what happened in the Middle East this spring, actually a great surge in appreciation for Islam, for religion. We have people wanting, I mean, huge parts of the globe wanting Islamic governments. Why do they see it as good?
Because they've tried everything and it failed them. They've only seen the truth in the law of the hour maker. For example, if you buy a car and the gentleman or the person that invented the car says, put the oil here, gas here, and water here, you'll say, I don't think you know what you're doing. I'm going to put gas here, oil here, and water here. How far is the car going to run? So we trust our maker to give us our manual for our maintenance. And of course we can believe in that, because how could we not, since our maker is the one that knows best what's better for us. So they've tried everything else, every ism, they've tried everything, and it failed them. So they go back to their foundation, the origin, the primal instinct, which they believe that they're a higher being that knows what's best for us. So they go back and default back to religion.
All religions have intolerance in them, and the Quran says there should be no compulsion about religion. And yet we have Islamic states where it's a criminal offense to leave Islam. How does that figure?
There are differences of opinions, I have to admit, among the scholars regarding this specific ruling, in all honesty. However, there is an opinion that says that if a person leaves Islam on their own will, there is proof in the Quran that it says, La ikraha fi din, just mentioned in the chapter number 2, verse 255, no compulsion of religion, says if they do leave on their own will, they are permitted to do that. And actually it happened at the time of Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. It was a Jewish man that became a Muslim and he left, and that's the revelation was meant in his honor. So we are to make sure that they understand the context and the understanding of the revelation in the scriptures itself. Is there any whims and desires or hidden agendas? Do people do that on their own ways? If not, then we have to take the context in itself. The religion, is it judged according to behavior of individual, or is individual is actually judged according to the faith and the teaching of the religion?
Paul, what is the consequence when entire countries get labeled by a religion? Christian Canada, Christian America, Islamic Egypt.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think one consequence right off the bat is a huge misrepresentation of that faith. If people look at the United States today and call it a Christian country, which they often do, they don't often, I'll use that as an example because it's not often said of Canada, but it is quite often said of the United States. That leads to a huge misrepresentation of what it means to be a Christian. And almost any serious Christian living in the United States will tell you that. And that's that means one of the jobs of Christians across North America is to identify very carefully what it means to be a Christian. It means to be a follower of Jesus, to embrace his teaching, his ethical teaching, his moral teaching, his teachings about his claims about who he himself is.
Okay,
that leads to that.
Okay, we're going to go to the audience now about their impressions on religion. Sheikh Allah El-Sayed, Dr. Paul Chamberlain, thank you both for being with us. We appreciate it. And we're now going to ask our studio audience for their opinions on what they're learning about religion. When someone is described as religious, give us your opinion. Do you think of someone who holds fast to a particular religious tradition? 2, do you admire them for their conviction? When someone's described as religious, are you immediately suspicious? Or do you feel sorry for them? Finally, 5, when someone's described as religious, are you interested in hearing what their beliefs are? And so our audience is taking a minute to think about those 5 options, and they're going to vote in on their instant polling device here in the studio. And let's take a look at their results. Okay, so what we're finding in the audience is that the word religious really does trigger that there are some particular religious beliefs that people are holding fast to. Not many are admired for their convictions in the studio audience, only 5%. Just a few are suspicious, so obviously we're kind of neutral about it. Not very many feel sorry for them. And 38% are interested in hearing what their beliefs are. So there's an interesting conclusion there. Number 2 is a particularly interesting column for me, that only 5% of people are admired for their religious beliefs. That's here among our studio audience. We'd like to know what our viewers at home think, so do email us or call our viewer feedback line with your response. We want to ask you, has a religious leader ever disappointed you, or have they helped you? Write to us at comments@contextwithlorna.com. And for our great studio audience that's voting today, we've got a special giveaway. Baker Publishing is giving our audience a free copy of Paul Chamberlain's book, Why People Don't Believe. Well, coming up, a guest that claims God is winning the race for attention in global politics. Stay tuned.